Hello, beautiful people. Today we have a very special guest with us on K-Lens. K-Lens is an online learning series where K stands for Karunachal and Lens stands for Learn, E for Engage, N for Network, and S for Synergize. Right. So the whole idea of this online learning series is, getting different perspectives of thought leaders and people who have excelled in their own spheres. We're interviewing them and getting their inputs on how youth can be more conscious and responsible future global citizens. So today, for this session, we have with us Veena, my friend from a long time ago, and we recently reconnected. And the interesting thing about Veena is she popularized the whole concept of zero waste weddings. And she also has co-founded an organization called as Everwords India. So I'm just going to hand over the conversation to her, to Veena, to introduce herself.
Hi Navita and hello everybody else. It's really nice to talk to you after a long time, and especially to talk about what we're going to be doing today itself. So to quickly introduce myself to everybody else, my name is Veena, and like you said, I am the co-founder of Everwords India. Everwords India is a zero waste lifestyle brand. And through Everwords, what I really try to do is to help spread mindfulness and ideas of zero waste living, make it easy and convenient. So, this is precisely what I do with Everwords. So, I think at the moment, that's how I've been identifying myself too. So, I have been um, I've been involved in social entrepreneurship for a very, very long time now. I think almost over 7 years. So I think finally I found my niche and I'm kind of doing what I really enjoy doing right now.
That's really nice to hear. So, in fact, that's how I know Veena as well. So we were volunteering at a common organization and called Guardians of Dreams, and then she used to be a fellow there, and I was just volunteering, and that's how we met. And it's really nice to see Veena working in a space which is very close to my heart. And zero waste is something which has gained popularity of late, right? With the whole concept of sustainability and the popularization of it from the West. But I see Veena writing so much about the zero waste. So she also has a hashtag Greetings Earthlings, which she started. It's really nice to read, the things she puts up out there on different topics, but in a very organized context, because I think that is something that is very crucial and it is missing. Right. So I'm just going to ask you at this point. So why zero waste? And I know you come from a fashion background, right? So why did you take up this particular path when you could have worked for I don't know, the biggest of companies? You're from a good college as well,
Right,
so
yeah,
I think
yeah.
let's talk about that bit.
Yeah, I hope you're okay with a slightly long story.
Yes,
And
yes.
I have to go back at least by 20, 22 years. I'm 25 years old, so I really have to go back that long because I think inherently my inspiration comes from there. Something that I've really realized is when you grow up in a regular middle class, Indian family, you definitely learn a thing or two about sustainability. Like we don't really, do things because we don't really save resources or save our food or, reuse our old t-shirts for a long time because, we want to reduce our carbon footprint, but rather because uh, reusing and reducing and repurposing for us meant saving money. And I think that's precisely the thought process with which even I grew up. Actually speaking, when I was growing up, my parents got me only two new clothes a year. One was for Diwali and one was for my birthday. And I was born in November, so sometimes Diwali and my birthday coincided. So I got only one that year. I used to hate myself, like I used to hate God for like doing that. But the point is, yes, this is how we grew up, and I grew up the same way too, and I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with me and the kind of practices that I was brought up in. But I think over time, in the last 2 decades, life has really changed. There's been globalization, there has been a lot of accessibility to different things, and there's also been aspiration, right? So what's happened over that time is the fact that we all grew up, we had money, we liked, we desired to own things, and something looked fancy, wanted to keep up with the trend. So all of this was happening, and I was a part of this too, right? Like I won't say, oh, I never did this. But yes, I mean, I've always been in eco club in school, like eco club in college and all of that. And I realized, I mean, in some way or the other, I've always been interested, but not like the way I am right now. So the turning point in my life was actually being in fashion school itself, because when you're in fashion, you really understand how unsustainable that field is, right? Because fashion, to be honest, is more unsustainable than even the shipping industry and the aviation industry, which means we add a lot more carbon footprint than any other industry, like right after oil industry, which is the highest, fossil fuel, which is the highest. So fashion stands right there. And once you understand that, and you also understand how inhumane the practices within the fashion industries, like we all hear a lot about fast fashion and how fast fashion is leading to unethical workplace practices and all of that. So understanding this, getting a first-hand experience of this, seeing this, it really, really shocked me. And I think that's how zero waste itself came into my existence. I mean, looking at it every day, understanding this, I realized that's not at all my values, and I realized I just can't work there. I just can't work in fashion and be satisfied. So I did start working right after my graduation in a fashion house, but I realized I had to quit if I had to really stay sane. So I did quit. I actually did quit, and then I started thinking, okay, why don't I? I have time right now, like which I didn't have earlier. So let me start changing my lifestyle. Let me start with me, and let me start doing things in the way that I care about, because I do have time and I don't have a lot of money now because I've quit my job, which means I really have to figure out a way to save my resources. So I think these both came in hand together, and I started converting my life into a zero waste one. I think doing that taught me a lot, and doing that really made me understand that there are a lot of people out there who might be as interested as me too, who might not have the courage or the urge to quit their job because that was not aligning with their values. Because sometimes they might be the breadwinner and they have to do it. You can't really blame them, right? Like, doesn't matter what your values are. At the end of the day, you need money. You need money. So yeah, so that's when I realized maybe a lot of people need direction in the space, and that's how I stopped being the consumer, or rather, I paused being the consumer and I switched over to being the business, because I wanted to support everybody who wants to be more mindful and be more sustainable, but also not be too expensive, not be unrelatable. Like, I can't bring a neem stick and give you and tell this is the most sustainable option. Why don't you use this instead of a plastic toothbrush, right? Like, it really doesn't make sense. So it was a balancing act where you really understood what can be relatable, accessible, as well as affordable. So I think over time, it has just come into like place for me. Yeah. So this probably is how I came into this picture.
I think that's quite a comprehensive, narration there, because as you were talking, right, I could relate to a lot of things that you were saying, because I grew up in a middle class Indian household as well, where sustainability never came with the idea of the environment. Sustainability came with the idea of save, save. Be mindful, not out of miserliness or stinginess, but it came from the attitude that you don't need too much to
Correct.
live,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And like you said, even I used to just get two clothes in a year, right? Similarly for Diwali and for my birthday, right? And I think it was normal. Like, that's how we grew up. And school bags were once a year, or what, or you would buy them only till it lasts. After that,
Correct.
you would get the new ones. But of course, I mean, I think this is something that probably our generation grew up with. But because if I look at my, 6 years younger than me sister, it wasn't like this for her because by that time things had changed quite a bit, right? And the earning capability of people also had increased. So, do you think that this also plays in a role when it comes to sustainability? Because I hear of so many people who want to make sustainable switches, right? But in the name of sustainability, they're buying products, more and more and more products, saying that, hey, I'm being sustainable. I am pro sustainability, pro environment. So I'm going to buy this t shirt to support this organization. Or, people also have these kind of mindsets. So what do you, think is the way to go forward in such cases?
Right. I think engaging youth is really important at the moment. Like you said, the next generation probably they were not as exposed to this in particular, like how we were. But definitely, people before us and until us, it has been a practice too. The best part about the current generation is they are more than 60% of the world population, right? So that's a huge chunk. If we can actually capture the attention of the millennials and the Generation Z, and teach them the right things to go forward, and just get them aware, right? Because right now, I just feel in a lot of ways, people are still not aware of what's going on. Like the more, like the deeper I delve into this itself, I think my understanding from what it was 2 years ago when I started off versus now itself is so much different, and I've learned so much in the process. And I just think there's a lot of awareness that is still pending. And like you said, sustainability is not about buying products, even if it's sustainable products, right? So even addressing smaller, like micro problems like this, and really explaining it to them, in particular the youth, I think that can make a huge difference. And I also feel, since they are going to be the ones who are going to be going through the adverse effects of climate change, because I think, I won't say we will be long gone. I think our period is going to be shorter than their period. So it is also important to teach them what's happening, and probably give them an idea of what they might be facing, even if they're not able to do anything about it, right? Prepare them for what's coming, right? Because sustainability and climate change crisis, especially, since it is a slow and long drawn process, it doesn't happen over a year or 2 years or even a decade. It takes like decades, like it takes at least five six decades to actually be seen, which has just started. So in the next 20 years you'll see there's going to be a huge difference. So talking about it to them right now will, I think, be a starting point, and also probably might make a huge difference. So I think that's definitely one of the ways forward. But I also think, apart from that, it is also important to address the current generation, to like the current, everybody who is living basically right now. That And the most important thing that I think we should address to them is the concept of overconsumption itself. I think, um, if you go back to the fundamentals, right? If you see what is the reason why we're facing all these problems, or like any environmental problem that we're facing today, I think the fundamental driver for all of that, you will actually see, is overconsumption. If we are able to just, if we have to just satisfy our needs, I think there's enough, even for the current population we have, which was not anticipated. I think it's almost 7.2 billion. So, everybody always talks about how population is one of the reasons why environmental sustainability is not possible. But I think that's definitely wrong. Because, in fact, even if you see with respect to carbon footprint and carbon emissions and all of that, 50% of the population, the poorest 50% of the population, actually emits only 10% of the carbon footprint. The
I
richest
want to
10%,
believe that. Okay.
the poorest 50% of the population actually contributes to only 10% of the carbon footprint globally. Whereas 10%, the top 10%, the richest 10% of the population contributes to about 50% of the carbon footprint globally. I think that really speaks a lot, right? So it's time we stopped blaming population growth, and really started looking at it as consumption problem, and especially as overconsumption problem. And I think that's the fundamental problem to be addressed right now.
Absolutely. I guess, what you touched upon is a very, very important point, right? Because most social organizations or, people who are working in the environment sector are targeting, you know, things such as cleaning drives. Yes, it plays a huge role. Cleaning drives or planting trees, which has its own place, right? But the amount of impact caused there versus when you work with, where there is overconsumption, right? Or where you work with youth who would become, future over consumers,
Right.
right? I think in these two spaces, of course, the change is again here also. It's a mindset or a behavioral change that's happening, right? It's not immediate, it's not really visible immediately. But I personally also believe that this is, a way in which real change will happen. Um, but yes, I mean, I agree to, a lot of pointers that spoke about here, especially in terms of the carbon footprint and, how do we really work on this particular issue, right? So which brings me to the next question where, so say for example, I am in college, okay, and I'm a young 18, 19-year-old kid who has no idea about any of these things. Yes, I care about the environment, I care about nature, I care about all of these things. But to me, it's something in the future, I'll think about it when the problem comes. So, how do you think that we can work with such people to make them more conscious and responsible? Because at that age, it's not really a priority for them, right?
Right, right. I think in every age it's probably not a priority. At least the way I look at it, the ones who are old enough are telling we're not going to be there anymore, so we don't really care. And the ones who are really young really don't understand the problem yet, so probably they're not able to start caring about it. So I think it again comes really down to education, right? And creating awareness through education, making it a part of syllabus and the education system itself. And it has to be tweaked, of course. Like what is going to be studied in the US is not the same thing that has to be studied over here, especially as environmental science, because I think everything changes because we are in the tropics, and the kind of ethnicity we are in is very different, and geography we have is very different, the development that we have is very different. So I think it's really important, and it's really high time that we really look at incorporating uh, environmental science in the context of India, um, in every level of school education. Just like how we really understood that, I mean, we were made to understand that trigonometry and differentiation and integration is really important to life. We did study, we did put a lot of effort into that. None of us like told, oh, that's not important, because marks were given for it and we had to, somehow it was pushed and drilled into our head. I think i think in a way, um, that could be one of the ways to really start. And once you're able to get that going with people like children, students, when you can make them like when you can push it to them first, and then they start getting aware about it, and then they start taking initiative. I think that's probably one of the ways that I will look at it. But I would also say a large proportion of the youth today are really aware and really want to do a lot of things and are quite environmentally conscious. Probably another way I will also approach it is to go to early childhood, right? Like to really uh, make parents as well as teachers instill these thoughts, because you and I think we both come from the same background, or you, me, and everybody else similar to us. We come from this thing where we had this drilled into our head early childhood, when we were really young. Irrespective of what we've gone through the rest of the years, we have really done. I mean, that thought was instilled in us when we were really small, and I think that made a big difference in what we are doing today itself. So, I think that's a place that we really need to tap.
I think that's very important, right? So while you were talking, I was just thinking about how I had EVS in school, but it was not a graded subject, you
Mm,
know. I don't think it was counted when you take the total, right? I
Right.
don't know how it is right now. For all I know, that's the same. And with the whole new rule right now, right? So
Yeah.
30% of the syllabus is going to be cut off from the syllabus so that the pandemic can, due to the whatever information or the education
Right.
that is lost. I'm wondering if they would actually just cut out EVS. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that.
Haven't you gone through the national education program, this thing? So right
Yeah.
now, and if I'm right, it is being, it is not, it is being removed.
Yeah, it's pretty sad because the information, they're talking about experiential learning, they're talking about changing the framework, in terms of the 5-3-3. But I don't know towards what objective, that's really happening. Uh,
I think I can answer that to a lot of extent. So we, especially, we're a developing country, right? And for us, our economic growth is really important. So basically, there are. I'm so sorry, I'm going away from the topic, but I think I have to take this because to really understand environmental sustainability and policy level changes and why this is happening, it's very important for us to really understand why. Where we stand itself as a country. So there are countries who have already developed, and because that was because they actually had the revolution, the industrial revolution, like way back, right? And we've been playing this catch up game in the last 50 years only. So there's a lot more for us to do to be a developed country because at the end of the day, everybody wants to move towards development. And that's the only way to go forward. Economic development is extremely important, right? And for a country like India, economic development means human capital with respect to STEM, especially where you can, so that's one of those things. So and also of course there are commerce and industry and all that. So ideally right now, the reason why these policies happen is because of these reasons, for to make more engineers, to make more doctors, to make more scientists, and to bring more industries, direct investment happening. So that's why even the current EIA 2020 struggles going on. But the point, like in a lot of ways, I understand this development thing is there, and which is why we have this problem. But I think it is really important for us as in individual level and policymakers in that level to really start taking into the metrics, I mean start taking into consideration the metrics of environment, because nobody's going to see it immediately, the results are not going to be immediate. We're not able to take it that seriously, and in a lot of ways I also think it's, it makes sense, right? Like you can't see it, and how will you expect it to be dangerous? So I think a lot of awareness has to be created, a lot of content has to be going on, and a lot in the Indian context itself. Like our major cities, Chennai, Mumbai, Calcutta, Visakhapatnam, take anything, our major cities are in the coast. If temperature rises, we are the ones who are going to submerge first. And those major cities are the point of economic growth too. So, I mean, it goes hand in hand, and I understand the rationale for why things are happening, but it's time we started looking at it differently too.
hmm. I think that's a very comprehensive, way of looking at it. But again, how does that translate to youth, right? Because we understand this at a national level, it's happening, right?
Right,
And changes are happening. But as youth, I think it just again comes down to choices,
right.
right? Um, as a school going kid or as a adult who's in college or a young professional, the choices that you make right now is going to have its own set of consequences, right? And somehow I feel that these consequences are not really um, in the face, because the messaging also when it comes to
Yes.
environment is save the planet, right? It
It's
is
not save
save.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not save yourself. At least if you say it is save yourself, save your family, at least people might think, you know.
I think we need to rebrand the whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So even this your entire journey that you've been on, with respect to the environment. So what do you think has been your biggest learnings, or rather your biggest failures from which you've really learned a lot from, by experience.
Right. I think for me, it all started off as environment, understanding about the environment. But then as I went into it, I think the way I've been answering itself, you would have realized that I'm not all about the environment. I think I go way back, way like away from that. And I think at the end of the day, it's about development and the fact that environmental sustainability and social development really go hand in hand. Until the time poverty, like it's a two-way street, like, right? Like until the time poverty exists and hunger exists, and it's not really going to be easy to look at environmental sustainability. Somebody who has to cut the tree to get timber because they don't have money to buy anything else, any other kind of fuel, that person is going to cut. You can't say go kill yourself or go die, and because you should not cut the tree. I think I mean, over time, that's something that I've really understood. That has been one of my biggest learning, to be more inclusive of the community while looking at the environment itself, and which of course translates into my work in a lot of ways, even with Everwords, the way we deal with our people, the way we pay them. We actually indulge in paying more than fair wages most often. So I think that's one of my biggest learnings. But something else that really goes without saying, and I think I should probably highlight, is when you come up with an idea and when you think you can do it, and you don't know how to do it, a lot of us realize, we don't think if we ask for help, maybe we might be able to get things done. So I think that was my biggest learning in the sense, like being an entrepreneur. I started with knowing almost nothing, and today I'm able to have more, um let's say, academic conversations on this front, only because I've been able to get help, and I've also been able to create this much impact, from Everword side and on my side also, only because I figured out that you can reach out for help and there is going to be help always. So I think these two are literally my biggest learnings.
That's, I think, very important learnings, right? Especially when you, I think that's, there in most people, right? When we do startup or when we just learning something, we forget that, there are people who also done this.
Right,
People with a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, who would have gone through a similar journey and who want to give back.
right.
Right. So I think that definitely is, it's very encouraging to, hear that from you. And so here I want you to talk a little bit about your zero waste wedding.
Ah, that was a fun initiative, actually. So this was right after I'd quit my job again, and I was trying to figure out my own lifestyle, and I was trying to see how I can go zero waste with it. And my wedding was just 6 months away, so that's when I realized, you know what, why don't I use this as an opportunity to educate people? So it started off there, but as I delved deeper and I started doing more research, I understood there are hardly facts, hardly any statistics that is around to really help you understand the kind of destruction the wedding industry itself is causing, right? Like, because I think there are more than 1 lakh weddings that happen in a year in India alone. Or sorry, 10 lakh weddings if I'm right. And we have no idea what's the environmental impact of those 10 lakhs weddings, and it was really shocking to me. So I thought probably I could pilot my own wedding to be a zero waste one and really understand what's the impact of other weddings and how much can be changed through mine, and also show that to people that sustainability can also be done at a scale. You can't say, oh, okay, I can probably try it at my home because it's just two of us, three of us, but at scale, when there are 600 people, it is impossible, right? So I wanted to really change that and show that this is possible, and that's how this whole thought process started. And we were quite successful at it too, touch wood. So this is probably how I would put it, as how it started. It was really fun because I had 6 months to plan this whole thing, so it also taught me a lot of things. When I say before I get into this, I think I really want to explain what zero waste means, right? Because a lot of these terms are now into play, and you see this everywhere, you read about this everywhere, but I don't know how much is always explained before it's written about. So zero waste, at least to me, what it means is you literally send zero waste to landfills, right? Because landfills are a huge problem, even in the sense that they're a big site of greenhouse gas emission, which is climate change's biggest problem too. So zero waste is where you don't send anything to landfills. Before doing that, you do three level of decision making, right? So the first one is to really understand, if you have to use something, if you have to buy something, you really think, do I need this? Can I do without it? Right? And if you really need to use it, because it's a mindset, you really then you try to understand, okay, I have to use this. Now let me see if I can find an alternative that is kinder to the environment and kinder to the people too, like the community too, right? So you see something that's more locally made, something that's compostable, something that can be changed into biogas later, etc. And the third thing is, of course, not sending anything to landfills itself, right? Even though you've used something, you see how you can dispose it in such a way that you do not send it to landfills, but rather create a resource out of it too, which is where the whole circular economy concept comes into place. So this was what I had in, I mean, before making any wedding decision, this is what was running in our heads, and this is what we based every decision on. So some of the simple things that we changed was cutting down a 3 day wedding into a half a day wedding, by comprehensive, like really bringing the entire 3 day weddings contents into the half day. So that's like literally cutting down 75 to 80% of the waste itself, because you're not having that many guests, you're not putting that many meals, you're not, so therefore not having that much waste, not that much decoration, not that much electricity. So literally everything gets cut. So the second thing that we did is anything personal that we had to buy, including wedding jewelry, wedding attire, wedding cards, everything. We tried to see how we can do without it. So I wore my grandmother's sari, which has been in the family for more than 100 years now, because she got it from her mother. And my husband just wore a t-shirt right out of the wardrobe on the day of the wedding, so I had no idea what he was going to wear. Everybody in the family, my mom, my dad, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, all the closest family members, since we had spread the message of zero waste to them, they also bought nothing. And so we tried to make do with everything that we have already. So by doing this, we have cut down literally a lot of amount of water, resources, labor, everything, and even the even killing of animals and silkworms, because we have the habit of buying silk saris for our weddings. So I think that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It's such a simple thing, but made a huge difference. When it came to so we also did a morning wedding, and we did an outdoor wedding. So that literally cut off electricity, air conditioning, lights, everything. So like I had zero electricity that I had to use, and we chose a really eco-friendly, like more like with a lot of greenery. The place was like really green. So because of doing that, we were able to cut down on also decorations. So we had done something very minimal with flowers that were seasonal, locally sourced from like the market, flower market directly. So these were some of the decisions which were quite simple to take to, but really made a big difference. And I think the biggest chunk of waste usually comes from the food area. So over there, I think traditional Indian weddings or Tamil weddings, at least, they have the habit of using banana leaves. So we were sorted there. But we had to make small modifications like no paper cups, no plastic cups, no water bottles, and no table linings with a plastic lining layer in them. So, while frozen things, we had to be extremely careful. We use steel tumblers, steel jugs, and everything, so that when later when we are disposing it, it can directly be shredded and composted, right? Because if any plastic contamination is there, we can't compost. We can't use that for composting. So that so we had sourcing work taken care like that. And I think overall, the most important thing, again, it comes to not sending even the things that you use to landfills, right? So it came down to disposing this correctly. So we had to make sure that everything that was biodegradable, we composted it. Excess food, what was spoiled, was actually sent to biogas plants, and the good ones were actually distributed between shelter homes in the neighboring areas. We also converted the the kitchen waste, the vegetable peels, and the fruit peels into garden fertilizers, which was again distributed to the local community in the Trivandrum area in Chennai, and because of also trying to be more scrutinizing in the planning process, we had zero plastic used ourselves. So literally everything could be transported, I mean, composted and sent into biogas and be reused itself. And there was very little waste that we did collect towards the end of it. We had 700 guests, so that you end up collecting, a little bit of waste at least, because you can't control what everybody else brings. So that was like a 1 feet into 1 feet small box, which we collected. We picked up the waste and we went to the local kabaddi wala and gave it off. So basically, it was all done. Morning wedding. I was back home by 1 o'clock and I was actually sleeping by 1:30. So there was no hassle. It was one of the like the chillest, funnest wedding. We had zero trash leaving the compound with sorry, zero trash leaving the compound in trucks going to the landfill. So I think that was a huge success that way, because I've seen as well as read at least two truckloads of waste goes out of every wedding venue after every wedding, which is a lot. And when I say one truckload can easily take 2.5 tons of waste.
Absolutely. I think that's a very inspiring, way to get married. But also, I guess your family really supported you, right? Right? Looks like, because inviting 700 people and managing to pull this off in half a day definitely would require immense amounts of support from, both sides of the family. It's not just,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that way I was blessed. And something else that we actually did with respect to that is, uh, well in advance before the wedding, we sent out a survey to every attendee of the wedding, explaining what zero waste is, why this is, and how the wedding is going to be, how different this is going to be, and made them participate in different decision making process, so that they feel like they've also been a part of the whole thing, so they don't feel like because Indian weddings are not just about the bride and the groom, it is about the extended family too. So by doing this we were able to get everybody's trust and everybody's ideas into it, and so we could keep everybody happy too.
Looks like it was a really community activity, right?
Yes.
Lovely. All right. So just going to move on to the next part. So in Karunachal, we work on three important areas, right? So we work on we work to bring experiential education to the youth communities. So again, as you were talking earlier about how, the 10% of the population actually contributes to 50% of the waste, right? So I mean, that's again something that we also really understand, right? Because if I don't have food to eat, I'm not going to care about plastic. I will get that whatever item in plastic and I will use that because
Right.
it's cheaper, right? So we understand that it's very important to work with the class of the people or the section of the society that causes this damage, right?
Right.
While also working with the other side, the so-called poor. Well, you have to also work with them because at the end of the day, they are also get involved in the whole process,
Right. Right.
right?
Because
So
they are the
keeping
ones who are going to get the impact.
Absolutely, they are the ones who get more impacted because of the
Yeah.
rest of the privileged class, right? So keeping this in mind, the programs that we are offering are in three bucket areas. So one is self exploration, where they the kids, basically the youth, work on their own inner selves, right? And then we have the second bucket, which is on environment consciousness, because plays a huge role, as you see that in the textbooks, you might, I mean, even if it is part of the syllabus, there are just terms which are used very loosely, right? And how do you translate that to yourself as an Indian and as a young kid, right? So that's the part we also work on, and we're also working on responsible entrepreneurship, right? So how do we bring in mindsets, because these are the people who will end up becoming entrepreneurs, or who are going to carry forward the entrepreneurial spirit in
Right.
whatever work that they do. So how do we actually bring responsibility into this, right? So these are some of the three themes that we're working on, and our programs are going to be designed in this, although we are running our programs right now. So what do you think that you would have to say in terms of these three areas with respect to how we could, your work could come under which particular bracket? Because I see that responsible entrepreneurship is definitely what you're doing, right? And also definitely environment consciousness is a huge part of it. But I also see self exploration being a part of it, because you as you embodied it into your own living, like your entire life has changed because of the way
Right.
you live,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I would just like you to
Probably.
share a bit about how you've been able to do it in these three
Okay.
buckets.
Okay. So, like you said, I think the most evident parts, yes, you can see, which is responsible entrepreneurship as well as being more environmentally conscious. So, I will probably start with talking about the other part, which is self exploration, and then move to the rest so that I can give it more time. Uh, I'd say like you said, for me, being more conscious has really changed the way I live itself, and it has brought in a lot of mindfulness, itself within me about how I am going to be. Because being environmentally conscious really is about being kinder to the environment, right? So then that really comes back to, can you be kinder to your people, and can you really understand who you are as a person? Then can, because if you have to be these certain things, or if you have to display these certain values, then you have to really know who you are and see if these values are inherent in you, or if you have to inculcate those values. So I think it really does change your whole perspective about life and you as a person itself. I think 5 years before, people who met me will never understand the person that I am today, probably because I think it's been a transition in a really good way, right? Like every day is a learning, and every day you really see what is it that you can do to improve yourself. So I think that really this really comes inherent with this, at least with the kind of work that I'm doing right now. A part of it is also about what you said, right? Like to really make people stick to sustainability, or what do you do to really make them feel like they should do it every day? One thing that I've realized is it is extremely important for each one of us to personally find out what is that one reason or many reasons, however that works for us. What is that reason that appeals to us in individually, that makes us want to be sustainable, right? Because what appeals to me need not appeal to you. Like, so for me, say if saving money appeals, maybe you are rich and you don't need to save money. So what is it that appeals to you? So I think understanding this particular question also makes you really understand yourself and really see what you have to be doing, right? So some of the things that really works for me is health. It's really important, and I think starting to work in sustainability, I've really started caring more about my health, my body, started listening more to my body, because I know if I'm harming the environment, it is indirectly coming back to me. As simple as, say, you drink water from a plastic water bottle and throw it. We say it's harming the environment because it will clog the drains and all of that. But do we tell people, hey, it's going to harm you because you're going to be drinking from that, it's carcinogenic, right? So I think ever since this happened, I think I've been more compassionate towards my own body and really try to understand, give it what it needs. And so that really started for me. So yes, finding this reason is a fundamental part, and I think that's where the self exploration itself comes. So everybody has to find their own reason, if you're in this space, to understand what is going to keep you going, what takes you, what is going to make this a habit and a routine, and not like a New Year's resolution, because New Year's resolution is this thing where we get excited And every New Year resolution is a good thing. It's not at all like we don't say I'm going to go like rogue this year. No, we probably say I am going to make sure I drink enough water a day, or let's say I'm going to start exercise this year. So it's always a good thing, right? It's just we do want to do it, but then we lack motivation because there's still no enough reason. But if we give ourselves enough reason and like really look deeper into it, then it really would make sense. So finding reason is really fundamental, which also makes you really find yourself. So that's one. With respect to being ego conscious, yes, I think ultimately that's what's really going to save ourselves too, right? Like as we go forward, to be more eco conscious, mainly because we know we have one planet, there's not only finite resources. Even though Elon Musk is working on it, Mars is not ready, which means there's no way we're going to be able to go somewhere else and leave our sorrows behind. We're going to be here and we have to face what we are facing right now. So I think ultimately, even if it's not today, at some point of time you need to start getting eco conscious, and it is really important. And I hope to create awareness as much as possible, even personally, to like really make that happen. So yeah, eco conscious is something that I'm very relevant to, even with your work. And the third thing is responsible entrepreneurship, and I think I get the most relevant over there because to me, when I say responsible entrepreneurship, yes, I'm doing something for the environment. So definitely there is some kind of responsibility that I'm putting into it, but it's not just about that, right? Give me a second. So I think, or rather, the way I approach work or entrepreneurship itself is to uplift the community that I work in. So a lot of the products we create, we try to work with really like people from down south in Tamil Nadu itself, in the villages, from the grassroots, women especially, and try to see how we can uplift them, pay them more than fair wages, more than industrial wages, whatever has been stipulated, so that we can be a reason for making them smile. So I think responsibility in entrepreneurship to me comes also in that direction, to be more ethical towards our practices itself. And unless we do that, I don't think we'll be able to achieve anything, even as an environmental company. So yeah, I think that's what I have to say about it.
Absolutely, because the part that you're talking about responsibility, right? So when we were conceptualizing the organization, so this was definitely there in our minds, right? So when we're talking about entrepreneurship, who are you responsible towards becomes very important. Are you responsible towards the environment? Are you responsible towards the people who are making your products? Who is your stakeholder? Who's your stakeholder you're responsible for? And I think a lot of times this gets missed out because entrepreneurship, yes, let's make money, but
Right.
it's more than that,
It's
right?
definitely more than that.
So I really admire your work when it comes to these, these practices, right? Because these are practices that nobody really talks about because you're working with the section which really needs it, and paying more than fair wages is, again, I don't know how many organizations do it because they claim to do it, uh, but on ground, that's again a question. So
Right. Yeah.
when you were talking about the self-expression part, you were talking about values, right? So I'd just like to know what are some of the values that you hold in your own life as something very dear, which has helped you along this entrepreneurial journey and throughout your own life, essentially, right, to get to where you are today.
I think the moment you ask me, that one thing that really, really goes a long way for me is to be kind. It's such a simple thing, but I really think lately, or rather over time, since we're all running this rat's race of um, promotions, earning more, getting that bigger house, or all of that, I think somewhere down the line we've lost a little bit of it. And recognizing that and really practicing that has helped me a lot, to be honest, in the kind of connections I make, to how close they stay with me, and the kind of help I get. And kindness is contagious, right? Like, you, when you are really kind to somebody, they cannot be unkind to you, right? So I think that's, I know it might sound really, say, utopic, but I think this really works for me, and I think it might work for more people too. In fact, just yesterday, somebody texted me and they told me, so my WhatsApp status, it says kindness, be kinder than necessary. So somehow I kind of really related to that, and it's been around in my phone for the last 2 3 years. And every few months, I'm like, somebody or the other will like drop a text to me and tell how, that really helped them, and they try to act on it, and it really makes a huge difference to me too when people get back to me and say it's really encouraging. So I think, to me, kindness is, it makes the cut.
Important value to have, especially when you're being kind to yourself as well, because a lot of times, as you were saying, right, being kind to your body earlier, you were talking about that. I think that's one thing that gets missed out. Be kind to this person, be nice to this person, say
Correct.
please, say thank you, sorry, but you don't do those to yourself,
Yeah,
right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a great value to
absolutely.
have. All right. So we've come to the last part of the discussion here. So we have a small rapid fire round. So this, is a set of 12 questions. It's essentially to get to know you a little more deeper, and also for us to see, some of the things that we can really learn from you, right? So let's just get into this. And so the first question is, what are the top three book recommendations that you have?
Okay, I'm still not into I mean, non-fiction. So fiction would be, Only Time Will Tell by Jeffrey Archer, and the entire series actually. Cain and Abel, again by Jeffrey Archer, and Famous Five, because I love Enid Blyton.
Wow. Okay. You just read out things that I used to read in school. Yeah. Awesome. I love Jeffrey Archer. I love Enid Blyton. Like I totally grew up,
Right?
throughout reading these books.
Yeah.
Lovely. Moving on. So, what's your top three books? Sorry, we finished books. What's your top three movies or documentaries?
Okay, so I think my all-time favorite is Sound of Music. It's also very pretty to watch. And lately, I've been hooked on to the documentary Conspiracies on Netflix. Also, because I'm generally interested in conspiracy theories, especially about Hitler and the World War and all of that. And the third movie that I really like is Life is Beautiful.
I think I have watched that long
That's
ago.
a really, really good one. I weeped like crazy after I watched that movie.
And I think my co-founder is really going to like you because he's big time into conspiracy theories, and
Ah.
you have you have really fun conversations with him.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna catch up on him later.
For sure. So the next question is, what is your one sentence advice towards the future generation?
It would be to be more mindful, and create a more mindful future for themselves.
All right. So the next one. So what's your morning routine like? Morning routine, morning ritual like?
I've almost forgotten it because of lockdown, but I will say what I do right now, which is wake up, brush, tea, and news.
Okay. And what's your nighttime ritual like?
Again, forgotten almost everything. So right now it is 6,000 steps to walk, shower, 5 minutes of applying oil for my skin, and sleep.
Awesome. Perfect. And next question is, who's your one inspirational figure in your life?
I would say more than inspiration, somebody I've really learned a lot from is there's this professor called, his name is Jeffrey Sachs, and he's with the Columbia University. I came to know about him through the classes that I took on sustainability and all. But the more I came to know about him, I started following his work. He worked with the Millennium Development Goals and all of that. And his work has really inspired me. And he's one of those people that probably I would love to follow his path.
Wow, I should definitely read up about him then. All right. So the next question: what's your favorite quote?
Quote, I've written it down. Give me a second. Okay, so I really like Toni Morrison, and this is something that I use everywhere, which is he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. It talks about how, if you know what you want to do in your life, you will figure out a way to do it no matter how hard it is.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important and inspiring quote to have, right? Look for the
Yeah,
reason why you want to do anything
yeah,
before you actually do it.
absolutely.
Lovely. All right. So the next question: if you could disinvent one thing, what would that be?
I think it's a little obvious, but I'm going to tell it anyway. It's going to be the single use aspect of plastic.
Yes, I kind of guessed that you were going to say that. But yes, all right. So the next one: if you did not have to work for money, what would you be doing?
Precisely what I'm doing right now.
Okay, awesome, lovely. I think everyone I've spoken to has just given me this answer. I don't.
Which is probably teaching you something, right? Like, it is so fascinating to see how a lot of people are doing this right now.
Yeah, and it's really inspiring to know them, in person and to be talking to them because there's so
Right.
much going on.
Absolutely.
All right, so the next question: if you could teach one topic experientially, what would that be?
I think my biggest learning and something that I've been practicing a lot is how to live sustainably and how to live zero waste. And I think that's what I would probably love to teach, because it's not a classroom topic at all. It has to be experiential learning.
Absolutely, I think that's the point. Moving on to the next question: if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say?
Oh, this is interesting. I think what I'd like to say is environmental sustainability and social sustainability go in hand. I mean, go hand in hand, and one thing can't be worked on without working on the other. And it is really important that we started taking care of our people and our planet.
Absolutely, people, planet, very important.
Yes.
The last question, okay? So, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
This is something that I shared even recently, even on my social media, which is please respond and don't react. So I think that's been a biggest boon for me, because when you're working on things on your own, when you're a solo entrepreneur, it's very hard to not to react to things, because a lot of things actually go wrong, and like you can't, and those are not in your hand. So to take a step back and to logically see the things and to respond to it without having emotions about it, and to, I think it's very important, rather like, and we shouldn't be reacting to the situation immediately.
Absolutely, I guess we hear this, right? We It's a very cliched sentence though. Don't react, respond. But then the way you put it, you
Yeah.
explain what you mean by response. So I think
Yeah.
that is important.
Right. Yeah.
Respond. All right, perfect. So, is there anything else that you would, like to share with us in terms of the work we are doing, and if we could improve ourselves on that, incorporate certain things into our own journey as entrepreneurs?
Right.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Right. I think I'm absolutely in love with what you do, because the main three programs that you focus on is like so much aligned with what I do exactly itself, right? So I think in that sense, been looking for more people to take this up and to really drive it to the grassroots also, and kudos to you on that note. And I'm a big fan of what you're doing, and I'm really hoping to stay in touch and help out in any way possible, to be honest. Um, yeah, so please continue with this enthusiasm and take this because you have an amazing direction for yourself. I only hope that you're able to fulfill what you dream itself, your dreams itself, and I want to wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Veena. Is there any last minute advice for us, for me and my co-founder that, I mean, you've been on this path
Yes,
and
it's not going to be easy, and it'll feel like you're not doing anything. Months will pass, like July already went, August is almost here, 6 days done, 7 days, I mean, seventh day today, and then you feel like you have only 3 more weeks left. You'll be actually doing a lot of work, but you can't see the results yet. But I just want to leave you with one thing. Don't think about the results. Continue to do the work that you're doing because somewhere the results are happening. You just can't see it yet, and you will get to see it soon. But until then, continue to put the work that you put in.
all right, because this is a conversation. As you were talking, I was just recalling. Just yesterday, we were talking about, looks like things are not moving. What do we do?
Oh,
It's a
I
conversation.
know. But don't ever think like that because things are moving and every day something new is happening, and it is not easy to see results immediately. And I think it's really important for us to not get frustrated because that's not going to make you then think logically and do your work the way you are doing right now, right? So, to not, I mean, to have a goal is important. I won't say don't have a goal, but don't expect results. Like, don't expect results at all. Let it happen.
Absolutely. I think that's some pretty good advice for us there. So, thank you so much, Veena, for being part of this conversation with me. I really had a lot of fun. Um, and yeah,
Thank you so much, Navita. I had a lot of fun too, and I think we should even without this session, we should catch up in between to just talk about all of this. It might be fun.
absolutely.
And thank you
All
for
right.
having me over.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.